Turn on any old sitcom. I don't know, say Friends or Alf. Hear that bright, booming laugh track in the background? Almost all of those people are dead by now. That's not a metaphor, a gothic fairy tale, or some dark urban legend. It's the dry, documented technical reality of television. That collective laughter you instinctively smile along with while staring at the screen, most of it was recorded onto magnetic tape in the late 1940s or early 1950s. Generations grew up eating dinner in front of the TV and falling asleep to the sound of other people's joy, to the voices of people whose bodies have long turned to dust. We share our everyday pleasures with acoustic ghosts. Let's be honest, there's something deeply unnatural about it, even creepy. We sit alone in a quiet room, watching a glowing box, and we laugh on cue at the voices of the dead. It feels like a glitch in the Matrix, some absurd mistake in the media industry that nobody ever bothered to fix. But the truth is, behind it all lies cold calculation, sophisticated engineering, and a history that started in the rubble of post-war Europe. Up until the middle of the 20th century, canned laughter didn't exist. And pre-recording shows wasn't really a thing either. American radio broadcasting, and later early television, lived purely in the moment. Everything was live. Actors stood in front of microphones, musicians played on the spot, and actual audience members sat in the studio, their sighs, applause, and laughter transmitted directly into homes across the country. If a broadcast was ever captured, it was onto enormous, fragile acetate discs. The sound quality was awful, and editing was out of the question. Recording to disc was a one-way trip. You made a mistake? Tough luck. A joke bombed? Enjoy playing dead silence over the airwaves. Everything changed in 1946. An American communications engineer named Jack Mullen came home from war-torn Germany. In his army duffel bag were 2 captured German magnetophone tape recorders and 50 reels of magnetic tape. Mullen had essentially smuggled out a technology that could record sound with a clarity that was almost frighteningly perfect for its time. German radio broadcasts sounded so clean that the Allies long assumed the announcers were broadcasting live from secret bunkers. Mullen brought the machines to California and held a private demo for Hollywood's elite. Among the guests was the legendary singer and actor Bing Crosby. Crosby hated the inflexible schedule of live broadcasts. He wanted to record his radio shows whenever he felt like it, spend his afternoons on the golf course, and not be tied to the strict timings of the network. He instantly saw the potential in that German war trophy. He poured money into a company called Ampex to reverse engineer and produce American tape recorders, and he became the first person to edit audio. That's when the industry stumbled onto an unexpected discovery. When Crosby and his team started pre-recording shows onto magnetic tape, they had unprecedented freedom. Now they could cut out bad takes, flubs, the sound of an actor coughing. They spliced together the best bits from different takes to create perfect pacing. But when they assembled the first show from pieces of tape, everyone was horrified. The editing had broken the magic of live presence. Imagine, a joke was told in one take, and the audience's reaction came from another. Because of those splices, the natural rhythm and breath of the crowd had vanished. Laughter would suddenly cut off mid-laugh, giving way to, in a sterile, eerie silence. Sometimes a joke would be brilliant, but the studio audience was already exhausted by the third take and barely reacted. A weird dissonance kicked in. The actor on stage gives it everything, nails the punchline, and all he gets back is dead quiet. The show felt lifeless. The fix came naturally, right there at the editing table. Sound engineers grabbed razor blades, dug through other reels for clips where that same crowd had genuinely howled at earlier episodes, carefully sliced those moments out, and spliced them in where the joke had fallen flat. That was the moment Frankenstein was born. For the first time ever, human emotions were ripped away from their owners, cataloged, and turned into a tool. But that was just backyard tinkering. The real game changer came when a guy named Charles Douglas stepped in. He figured chaotic film splicing was ancient history. What he wanted was total, dictator-level control over what the person on the other side of the screen felt. By the early 50s, television had planted itself firmly in every American living room. But fresh technology brought fresh headaches. Sitcoms were now taped in advance, and producers quickly learned that a live studio audience was a nightmare for production. People acted unpredictable. They'd crack up together at some dumb flub an actor made, ruining the take. They'd totally missed the subtle, painstaking irony the writers had sweated over. And when a joke did land, the crowd would go into such a drawn-out frenzy that the actors had to stand there with straight faces, waiting for the wave to pass. That wrecked the timing and killed the momentum. Directors were pulling their hair out. They needed laughter that was obedient, on demand, switchable at the snap of a finger. And that's when Charles Douglas walked on stage. A sound engineer at CBS who decided that human emotions were way too important to leave to a bunch of random people in the audience. In 1953, he unveiled a device that gave him an absolute monopoly on TV comedy for the next 2 decades. It was called the Laugh Box. To stock that machine with sound, Douglas did some monumental work. He didn't just grab random laughs off the street, he hunted for pure, filtered emotion. For instance, he spent hours recording the great mime Marcel Marceau. Why him? Simple. Marceau performed in silence. The audience laughed only at his movements and expressions, so the recordings had zero background chatter, off-mic noise, or stray voices, just clean, untainted laughter. Another source was comedian Red Skelton's shows. From those hundreds of hours, Douglas carefully clipped out the richest, most contagious seconds. The laugh box itself looked like a Victorian engineer's fever dream come to life. It was a heavy wooden cabinet just over half a meter tall, sort of a cross between a portable organ and a giant typewriter. Inside hid a mechanism that was mind-blowing for its era. 32 looped magnetic tapes endlessly spinning on rollers. On each tape, Douglas had managed to cram 10 different audio tracks. Altogether, the machine could dish out 320 unique flavors of human amusement. On top sat a keyboard. By tapping those keys, Douglas literally played the audience's feelings like an organist in a cathedral. A light touch could summon a delicate female giggle, add a deep male guffaw on top, or launch a wave of scattered applause. At the bottom was a foot pedal. The engineer used it to smoothly adjust the volume and duration of the effect, creating the illusion of an invisible crowd slowly fading out. Douglas knew exactly how powerful his box was. He turned it into a closely guarded trade secret. The device was always locked with a heavy padlock. No one, not directors, not producers, and certainly not nosy journalists, was allowed to look inside. Douglas personally brought the covered machine to every set. He hooked it up to the soundboard himself and was the sole judge of when the audience should laugh. In Hollywood, this process was gently called sweetening. If a comedy felt flat, Douglas would simply add a few spoonfuls of his canned laughter. The Flintstones, the Jetsons, Bewitched, all these legendary shows were crafted to the tune of his wooden box. It got absurd. His collection had voices so recognizable that regular viewers started to remember them. The most famous was a piercing female laugh, nicknamed the Laughing Lady in the industry. That specific shriek jumped from sitcom to sitcom for 30 years. That woman might have physically been dead by then, but her ghostly voice kept entertaining millions of Americans every week. An analysis of Douglas's archive shows he performed a real vivisection of human joy. He broke our emotions down into strict, dry categories. He had dozens of shades of laughter at his disposal. For instance, the titter, a short, slightly nervous, stifled giggle used for delicate jokes. For family scenes, the chuckle was perfect, a soft, warm little grunt. When something ridiculous happened on screen, he'd go for the belly laugh, a deep, rolling guffaw that shook the speakers. And for the crudest gags, Douglas saved the guffaw, a sudden explosion of laughter. To make the deception as convincing as possible, Douglas mixed in so-called soloists. These were individual, sharply distinct voices of real people. The most iconic was the sneeze laugh, a recording of a man whose fit of laughter would suddenly end with a loud sound like a sneeze. When viewers heard these markers week after week in different shows, they got a strange, almost familial feeling. It felt like they were watching TV in the company of old, dear friends. It was the perfect illusion of togetherness. The industry created a closed loop. Dead people in a box made the living feel less lonely in front of their screens. But how did an ordinary wooden box with magnetic tapes manage to take over our will? Why did millions of people, fully aware that the laughter was fake, still obediently break into smiles? You might think of yourself as a perfectly rational, critical thinker. You know the joke on screen is lame, the actors are overacting, and the laugh track is a fake recorded half a century ago. But there you are on the couch. You hear that ghostly laughter, and your lips just curl into a smile on their own. Why? Are we really that stupid that a simple audio recording can fool us? The answer lies in our evolution. The thing is, laughter has never really been about humor. Laughter appeared long before humans learned to string words into jokes. For our distant ancestors, it was a crucial social glue and a safety signal. When a prehistoric tribe heard the laughter of their kin, each individual hominid's brain received another. The signal. It's all good, no danger, we're together. Laughter is one of the oldest biological markers of trust and group belonging. Psychologist Robert Cialdini, in his classic work on social influence, describes this through the concept of social proof. We subconsciously look to others to decide how to behave in uncertain situations. Our brain is lazy. Instead of spending energy on deeply analyzing every line we hear, it looks for external cues. If everyone around is laughing, it means it's safe and fun here, so we should join in. Back in the 1970s, scientists ran a clever experiment. They had two groups of students listen to recordings of mediocre comedians. One group heard the tracks with canned laughter, the other without. The results were clear. Those who listened to the jokes with the fake laugh track rated the humor as much better and laughed louder and longer themselves. The canned laughter worked flawlessly, even when the participants knew it was fake. Modern research using fMRI has revealed even more. When we hear the sound of someone else laughing, our premotor cortex instantly lights up. That's the area responsible for preparing our muscles for movement. So your brain starts getting your facial muscles ready to smile before you've even processed the joke itself. This is thanks to so-called mirror neurons. They make us unconsciously mimic the actions and emotions of those around us. Our auditory system picks up a sound wave of a certain frequency, the mirror neurons fire, and our face naturally forms the right expression. It's pure physiology, a reflex, just like your leg jerking when the doctor taps your knee with a little hammer. TV producers committed the greatest crime against our biological autonomy. They hacked the human nervous system with pieces of magnetic tape. They created the illusion that you're part of a big, happy, safe group. Even if you're lonely, stuck within four walls in a city apartment, going through a rough patch, those dead voices from the Douglas box create the illusion of warmth and belonging for your subconscious. You feel like you're part of the tribe. That's why canned laughter became the gold standard of television. Producers realized they could sell viewers absolutely any low-quality show, as long as they mixed in the right acoustic stimulants. It was an era of total control. But it couldn't last forever. Sooner or later, someone had to rebel against this hypnotic enslavement. And when the creators of the smartest, deepest shows tried to switch off that infernal laugh machine, they faced fierce resistance from TV executives who couldn't imagine airing anything without those ghostly voices. When you use technology to make people smile at dumb jokes about a broken plate, that's one thing. But what happens when those in power use the same technology to smooth over the edges of real human tragedies? That's where we fall down the rabbit hole of media cynicism. In the second half of the 20th century, canned laughter stopped being just a technical trick. It turned into a tool for ideological censorship and emotional anesthesia. A vivid and chilling example is the sitcom Hogan's Heroes, which aired on American TV in the late 60s. The plot was built around American and Allied prisoners of war locked inside a Nazi concentration camp during World War II. Think about that for a second. Barracks, barbed wire, SS guards with dogs, and then, layered right on top of it, the cheerful, recorded laughter of the dead. CBS executives insisted on using Douglas's laugh track to tone down the grimness. They literally tried to make a concentration camp feel cozy and fun for family viewing. But the loudest rebellion against this death loop happened during the making of MASH. That legendary show followed the day-to-day of a U.S. Mobile Army surgical hospital during the Korean War. From day one, showrunners Larry Gelbart and Gene Reynolds told the network brass, "We're making a show about surgeons up to their elbows in blood, trying to save mangled 19-year-old kids. Layering artificial laughter over that is morally wrong." CBS's response was brutal. No laugh track, no show. The audience is dumb. They won't know when to smile. After long, exhausting battles, the two sides reached a fragile, almost insane compromise. They kept the laugh track in the doctor's downtime, in the tents, the mess hall, or during their drinking sessions. But the producers fought for and won the right to kill the audio entirely during operating room scenes. Whenever surgery was on screen, Douglas's assistants literally took their hands off the keyboard. The most interesting thing, though, happened across the Atlantic. The BBC, which bought the rights to air MASH, simply went in and cut out every single bit of canned laughter from every episode. And it radically changed how people experienced the show. In the US, viewers watched a classic, fairly light sitcom. In the UK, people cried and deeply connected with the characters in a harsh, profound anti-war drama with streaks of dark humor. Same footage, same actors, but completely removing the audio hypnosis turned brain-fast food into genuine art. Charles Douglas's monopoly over his mysterious box didn't start cracking until the late 70s. The engineer was getting older, more paranoid, and outright refused to upgrade his creation for new sound formats. He kept hauling that wooden box from studio to studio, forcing directors to reuse the same tired recordings from the 1940s. Then, in 1977, during the filming of a comedy show, Douglas got into yet another fight with a director who wanted a more modern sound. That was the point of no return. Soon after, two of Douglas's former employees, Carol Pratt and Norm Gillard, built their own version of the Laugh Box. Their machine used newer cassette formats, was more compact, and most importantly, contained fresh, contemporary recordings of live audience reactions. The ghostly voices of the 1950s slowly got pushed out by new generations of howling laughers. By the end of the 20th century, the classic canned laugh track was sentenced to death. But did that mean the industry had given up on manipulating our emotions? Or did we just stop noticing how we were being programmed? At the turn of the century, a quiet revolution started on television. Show creators finally dared to do what once seemed unthinkable. They muted the sound. One of the first to win that war was writer Aaron Sorkin. While working on Sports Night in 1998, he fought an exhausting trench war with ABC's executives. Sorkin. Sound engineers had to keep turning down the volume of the laugh track, episode after episode. They made it softer, thinner, until eventually that laughter faded away completely. Then came the era of single-camera sitcoms. Malcolm in the Middle, Scrubs, The Office, Arrested Development. These shows outright rejected fake reactions. Comedy in the new century started building itself on completely different tools: awkward pauses, characters shooting quick glances at the camera, a pseudo-documentary style. Viewers were no longer given audio cues. They were given back the right to decide for themselves whether something was funny or not. The television landscape was cleansed of those ghosts from the 50s. Today, Charles Douglas's legendary wooden box gathers dust on a shelf at the Smithsonian, a quirky artifact of a bygone era. It seems like we won. We've grown up, gotten smarter, and freed ourselves from cheap psychological manipulation. But have we really? If you think emotional sweetening is a thing of the past, take a closer look at today's media landscape. Sure, classic sitcoms gave way to new formats, but Douglas's techniques simply evolved and migrated to other platforms. Watch any modern reality show, cooking competition, or talent show. Sound engineers are still meticulously cleaning audio tracks, cutting out random coughs from the audience, artificially boosting applause, adding a tense hum before results are announced, or slipping in odd sighs when a kid takes the stage. Only now, they don't do it with pedals and tape reels. They do it with a couple of clicks in digital audio editors. And what about our smartphones? Short videos on TikTok or Instagram, that's the same laugh box, just taken to its absolute extreme. Why do creators layer shrieking, sped-up sounds of other people's laughter onto their clips? Why do they slap giant emojis across half the screen? Those are the same markers. A signal for a lazy brain. Heads up, something funny is coming, get ready to smile. We still need a prompter to steer our emotions in real time. And there's a deep, slightly sad existential truth in that. We live in an age of unprecedented loneliness. We're locked inside our apartments, walled off from each other by screens and endless news feeds. Humans are deeply social creatures. We desperately need to feel part of something bigger. And when we're sitting alone in a dark room, the sound of other people having fun, even if it's synthetic, even if it was recorded 3/4 of a century ago, gives us the illusion that we're not alone. Those archival voices of the dead, still crackling through speakers, perform a vital psychotherapeutic function. They connect us to an invisible tribe. They whisper to our subconscious that the world is still safe because someone nearby is laughing so heartily. So next time you put on an old comedy series and catch yourself smiling along with that upbeat canned laughter, don't rush to scold yourself for being naive. Just remember that right now, you're taking part in the most massive seance in human history. You're sharing your living, genuine joy with people who've long been gone. And maybe that ghostly laughter from a distant past is the best proof that even in our deepest solitude, we're desperately searching for the warmth of a human voice.